coverage of President Trump as he announces billions of dollars in new tariffs targeting China and what the White House calls that country's unfair trade practices. China threatening to retaliate. Let's hear what the president has to say.
We've lost, over a fairly short period of time, 60,000 factories in our country. Closed, shuttered, gone. 6 million jobs at least gone. And now they're starting to come back. You see what's happening with Chrysler, with Foxconn, with so many other companies wanting to come back into the United States. But we have one particular problem, and I view them as a friend. I have tremendous respect for President Xi. We have a great relationship. They're helping us a lot in North Korea, and that's China. But we have a trade deficit, depending on the way you calculate, of $504 billion. Now, some people would say it's really $375 billion. Many different ways of looking at it, but any way you look at it, it is the largest deficit of any country in the history of our world. It's out of control. We have a tremendous intellectual property theft situation going on, which likewise is hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's on a yearly basis. I've spoken to the president. I've spoken to representatives of China. We've been dealing with it very seriously. As you know, we're renegotiating NAFTA. We'll see how that turns out. Many countries are calling to negotiate better trade deals because they don't want to have to pay the steel and aluminum tariffs. So we are negotiating with various countries. Mr. Lighthizer, Mr. Ross, we are just starting a negotiation with the European Union because they've really shut out our country to a large extent. They have barriers that they can trade with us, but we can't trade with them. They're very strong barriers. They have very high tariffs. We don't. It's just not fair. NAFTA has been a very bad deal for the United States, but we'll make it better, or we'll have to do something else. The deal we have with South Korea is a very one-sided deal. It's a deal that has to be changed. So we have a lot of things happening, but in particular with China, we're going to be doing a Section 301 trade action. It could be about $60 billion, but that's really just a fraction of what we're talking about. I've been speaking with the highest Chinese representatives, including the president, and I've asked them to reduce the trade deficit immediately by $100 billion. It's a lot. So that would be anywhere from 25%, depending on the way you figure, to maybe something even more than that. But we have to do that. The word that I want to use is reciprocal. When they charge 25% for a car to go in, and we charge 2% for their car to come into the United States, that's not good. That's how China rebuilt itself. The tremendous money that we've paid since the founding of the World Trade Organization, which has actually been a disaster for us. It's been very unfair to us. The arbitrations are very unfair. The judging's been very unfair. And knowingly, we always have a minority, and it's not fair. So we're talking to World Trade, we're talking to NAFTA, we're talking to China, we're talking to European Union. And I will say every single one of them wants to negotiate. And I believe that in many cases, maybe all cases, we'll end up negotiating a deal. So we've spoken to China, and we're in the midst of a very large negotiation. We'll see where it takes us. But in the meantime, we're sending a Section 301 action. I'll be signing it right here, right now. I'd like to ask Bob Lighthizer to say a few words about the 301 and where we are in that negotiation. And We're doing things for this country that should have been done for many, many years. We've had this abuse by many other countries and groups of countries that were put together in order to take advantage of the United States, and we don't want that to happen. We're not going to let that happen. It's probably one of the reasons I was elected, maybe one of the main reasons, but we're not going to let that happen. We have right now an $800 billion trade deficit with the world. So think of that. So let's say we have 500 to 375, but let's say we have 500 with China, but we have 800 total with the world. That would mean that China is more than half. So we're going to get it taken care of. And frankly, it's going to make us a much stronger, much richer nation. The word is reciprocal. That's the word I want everyone to remember. We want reciprocal, mirror. Some people call it a mirror tariff or a mirror tax. Just use the word reciprocal. If they charge us, we charge them the same thing. That's the way it's got to be. That's not the way it is. For many, many years, for many decades, it has not been that way. And I will say the people we're negotiating with, smilingly, they really agree with us. I really believe they cannot believe they've gotten away with this for so long. I'll talk to Prime Minister Abe of Japan and others, a great guy, friend of mine, and there'll be a little smile on their face. And the smile is, I can't believe we've been able to take advantage of the United States for so long. So those days are over. Ambassador Lighthizer, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, for those of you who don't know, Section 301 is a statute that gives substantial power, authority to the president to correct actions in certain circumstances where there's unfair acts, policies, or practices by our trading partners. In this case, the area is technology. Technology is probably the most important part of our economy. There's 44 million people who work in high technology areas. No country has as much technology-intensive industry as the United States, and technology is really the backbone of the future of the American economy. Given these problems, the President asked USTR to conduct a study. We conducted a thorough study. We had hearings. We reviewed tens of thousands of pages of documents. We talked to many, many business people. We had testimony, as I say, and we concluded that, in fact, China does have a policy of forced technology transfer, of requiring licensing at less than economic value, at state capitalism, wherein they go in and buy technology in the United States in non-economic ways, and then finally of cyber theft. The result of this has been that the president has analyzed.
So Robert Lighthizer, he's the U.S. Trade Representative, explaining some of the background of the president's decision here as he announces billions of dollars, perhaps $60 billion in new tariffs targeting China and specifically, as you heard Ambassador Lighthizer say, technology. We're going to continue monitoring this. Let me bring in Hallie Jackson, our chief White House correspondent, as we watch these events. Hallie, this is the president really sticking to a campaign promise that was a theme of his campaign.
You remember all those rallies on the campaign trail, Lester, when President Trump railed against China for this particular issue. So this really is the culmination of that, a year plus into his administration. There's a couple of main points to make here. Number one, why is the White House doing this? It's pretty simple. They believe that China's not being fair when they, in their view, steal tech secrets, for example, or put pressure on companies to reveal trade secrets about technology in order to do business with China. So that is why they are slapping these tariffs on about $50 billion worth of Chinese goods. Here's the real danger, though. It's not about whether products in China, made in China, that get sent here necessarily could become more expensive, although that is a possibility. It's, will China engage in a trade tit for tat? Will China retaliate by, for example, putting punishing tariffs on farmers here in the United States? That is something that, for example, people who work in the agriculture industry are very concerned about, because the U.S. exports a lot of agricultural goods, a lot of soybeans, for example, over to Asia and in particular to China. So that's one of the big issues. You have a big group of retailers, some of the biggest brands that you know well, Walmart, for example, Macy's, who are concerned about this, who have asked the White House to reconsider. The process by which this goes into place, there's going to be about a 15-day period in which they'll continue to look at this and then determine which products are actually going to get the tariff. But the bottom line here to the White House, this is a promise made, promise kept. To folks who are out in some of these states that, by the way, voted for Donald Trump, these farmers in more red states, there's a real concern about how this is going to affect their businesses. Lester.
And Hallie, we continue to monitor this news conference. Another story that's circulating very quickly there at the White House. The president's private lawyer, John Dowd, who's been representing him on issues surrounding the Russia investigation, is leaving. What do we know about his exit?
So this is a big deal, Lester, because John Dowd has been leading the charge on the criminal defense team, or on the defense team, I should say, for Donald Trump as it relates to that special counsel investigation. He is now resigning, we have confirmed, telling my colleague, Kristen Welker, here at the White House that he loves the president and wishes him well, but he will be stepping back from that role. This is the second shakeup in just a matter of days for the president's legal team. He has already brought on a kind of bulldog lawyer named Joe DeGeneva to join his team. That's in addition to Jay Sekulow, who might be familiar to viewers of cable news. He's often been out there as a kind of surrogate for Donald Trump, defending him. What does this mean when taken as a whole, Lester? Well, it seems to be an indication that the president is shifting up his strategy when it comes to how he handles and behaves with Robert Mueller and that special counsel investigation. There's an internal White House lawyer here, Ty Cobb, who has long said the White House is cooperating. And again today, the statement from one of the other lawyers for the president has been that they will continue to cooperate. But we've already seen in this last week, the president, for the first time, ramp up his attacks on Robert Mueller by calling him out by name, Lester. That's significant and new.
All right, already a busy day. We're not even at 1 o'clock Eastern time. We will have your full reporting a bit later on. Hallie, thanks very much. Again, the president, right now, we'll just take a quick peek at him. He's about to sign the memorandum, essentially putting into motion this notion of billions of dollars of new tariffs on Chinese imports to the United States, what he says is a reciprocal approach to trade and fulfilling, again, a campaign promise. All the developments when I see you on NBC Nightly News. For now, I'm Lester Holt in New York, NBC News. Good day.
Thank you all very much. Marilyn? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Would you like to testify in Special Counsel Robert Mueller, sir?
Thank you.
Your lawyer, John Dowd, resigned today.